Hello and welcome. I'm Vijay Srinivas. US President Donald Trump continues to keep the world guessing, leaving world leaders on tenterhooks through his tariff threats. Trump, most recently on Air Force One, had stated that India may pay anywhere between 20 to 25%. What could be the potential impact on the Indian economy and on the world? So, joining me to discuss more is trade economist Mr. Biswajit Dhar. Thank you very much indeed for your time, sir. What would be the short-term and medium-term impact on Indian exporters if the United States imposes 20 to 25 percentage tariffs as reported?
Yeah, I think there will be some short-term pains, but I'm looking at these 25% tariffs in the context of the larger BTA negotiations and the possible pressures that we would have been, or we are in actually, to open up our agriculture and dairy markets. So the I think the if you look at the trade-offs, and there are other issues as well, because BTA is going to be a full-fledged trade agreement. Unlike other countries who are only for whom only tariff mattered, and there were only sort of tariff negotiations going on. In case of India, have been negotiating, or we are negotiating, a full-fledged trade agreement with the US. So
That's
there
right.
are many other issues that are coming in, which would include intellectual property, and there is a lot of pressure on India. And US has consistently argued that Indian Patents Act is not compatible with the WTO TRIPS agreement, and it needs to be changed. Now we have a Patents Act with a view to keeping the prices of medicines down. And in fact, our Patents Act and the pharmaceutical industry that has developed because of the Patents Act has also benefited the US. US is the largest market, India's
Mhm.
largest market, and we
That's right.
sell the generic medicines which are consumed by those Americans who are not covered by the insurance, with any kind of insurance, the retired people and the old people. So so for me, I was actually looking at these two sort of trade-offs, and given the impact that all of us have been talking about of a trade agreement with the US and opening in agriculture, which would have actually cost livelihoods and food security. um, I think that these 20-25% tariffs, they would actually impact on in the short run, but over the in a medium term scenario would actually be that the American public would feel the pinch. And again, as I said, that many of us have been arguing that of course tariffs leads to increase in prices of all the products.
That's right.
And President Trump has been very worried about the high prices of medicines in the US. Now, if he puts 20% tariffs on medicines, on
Far more work.
imports of medicines for the US from India, then his entire narrative that prices of medicines should be down, that would fall flat. So I think
That's right.
in the medium term, I'm sure that President Trump himself will be forced to weigh the options of the kind of policy he's pursuing, because it's not good for the US. In any case, I think that just by imposing tariffs, he can't get his manufacturing sector going. That's an impossibility.
So, how do you assess the current state of US India trade negotiations going on? Do you see some kind of a shifting of goalposts happening? What are the key sticking points? Why it's kind of dragging for a long time?
No, see, the thing is, I'm very happy that the government of India has made it very clear to the US, and that's what it seems, that there are red lines. Yeah, that if the US farm lobby pushes
Hmm.
India too far, it's not as if India is going to capitulate. That is not going to happen. And of course, if President Trump is talking about the importance of protecting the interests of his constituency, he always talks about the interests of his farmers, ranchers, businesses, and all that. Now, Indian government has the largest segment of our workforce, which is in agriculture. their livelihoods and the country's food security cannot be threatened or cannot be bartered away through a trade agreement. This is a very hard earned kind of situation that we are in. Our food security was periled in the mid 60s, was in peril in the mid 60s, and we have come to a situation when we are food self sufficient. So that is the sticking point. I think that India's refusal to capitulate, to accept U.S. pressure, is what is actually dragging the negotiations.
Okay, but we have been tracking what Trump administration has been talking about as far as the trade war is concerned, tariff war is concerned, and in your view, how credible is this threat from President Trump, and what sectors are most vulnerable in this?
Well, see let us see the sectors which have the most exposure to the U.S. market. Huh? Now, our largest export items include
Pharmaceutical.
mobile phones. In fact,
Okay.
electronics products and mobile phones is the largest. Then comes, pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals is number three, and then of course, gems and jewelry is number two. So these are the three sectors where the exposure is quite large. Now,
Hmm.
in case of the electronics and especially mobile phones, 25% tariffs on mobile phones is also going to hurt Apple. Yeah.
That's right.
So it's not as if there are no costs to to the American interest. There is a cost to the American interest, and as I said, that India sells cheap mobile phones. Mobile
Hmm.
phones of good quality, and if it is produced in India, then they can be affordable to the American citizens. And if that advantage that India actually provides by providing cheap mobile phones, that is taken away, and of course the Americans also suffer. Yeah. So that's number one. So mobile phones, and like I said, pharmaceuticals, of course, is in terms of the industry, that industrial sector, that is the number two which could actually get affected.
So, okay, and India has signaled that it won't offer fresh concessions before the August 1 deadline. And the Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal, who spoke to the media, recently at an event where he said, "You look, we keep India's, interests on top of the table for any kind of negotiations for that matter." Is this some kind of a strategic gamble you see?
No, it is, and I think that's the position that should be actually. See, because countries sit at the negotiating table,
That's right.
trying to maximize their interest for their own the governments for their own countries. So government negotiate with the best interests of their countries in mind. Both in terms of an offensive interest and a defensive interest. So while we would like to make the most of most of the gains in the US market, we would like to get more market access. We'd also try to see that we don't get unduly hurt by opening our market. So that can be a bargain. That's a bargain that, like I said at the beginning, I'm very happy that the government of India has rejected that right at the beginning. So we said that these are non-negotiable issues for us, and we will not negotiate. Now we have seen this in the case of India EU negotiations as well. These negotiations have been going on for the past 18 years, and the reason being, India and the EU have not come to an agreement on certain critical areas. And the government of India said, look, that is not. These are issues that are non-negotiable. So I think that's the right position to take in trade negotiations. And as I said, trade negotiations have to be a give and take. Now,
That's
the
right.
way President Trump is dealing with his partner countries, he wants a one-way traffic. He just wants to extract as much as he can from his partner countries, giving nothing away to to the other countries. Now that's not trade negotiations. I think that's just
Trade
unilateral.
hegemony, you call it.
Exactly, unilateralism, and we are influence, trying to influence. I won't use the word hegemony. That would be quite controversial. But I'm saying that is unilateral. That's not bilateralism.
Okay.
That can't be negotiated.
Okay. How does India's reluctance to open up agriculture and dairy market affect its overall sort of bargaining power as far as the trade negotiations concerned?
Of course, that's a good question because our weakness in agriculture, because agriculture has been the weakest sector in the Indian economy, and it has been in crisis for decades now.
That's right.
That of course limits our bargaining power, because if you have a sector where you can say we can't give even an inch,
Hmm.
that makes it very difficult. I must confess. So I think there is we need to strengthen our agricultural sector, and also certain manufacturing sector, because we had actually drawn red lines in a whole host of sectors, major sectors in industries as well, where like for instance, automobile industry was completely out of bounds as far as trade negotiations were concerned. But now we are sort of offering, like we did in the UK trade deal.
Okay.
We did that. So I think going forward, we need to make a very clear assessment of the critical sectors in the Indian economy, where which actually hold back our negotiating bargain. And we must do the most. Actually, we need to invest in agriculture in order to make it more competitive, and then it can be a fair game. So I admit that imposing high tariffs, by imposing high tariffs and refusing to bring down high tariffs, makes it difficult for us to negotiate, and we must find a way out of that.
Okay. And how significant is this dollar 46 billion trade surplus India holds with the United States in shaping American trade policy towards India?
Well, that's again very important, because see the 46 billion trade deficit that India, or deficit that US has vis-a-vis India, that is the target. That is the President Trump's target. He wants to reduce that trade deficit. Now that trade deficit can only be reduced if India imports more from the US. Yeah,
That's right.
and I don't think there is a possibility of in India finding more market. We have already quite a huge market in the US, but what do we import? And that's the sort of a $1 billion question that we are facing now. US doesn't have competitiveness in most sectors, in manufacturing sectors. That's why President Trump is imposing tariffs on other countries, so that he can actually build his industry in the manufacturing sector behind the tariff wall. It's almost that infant industry protection that he's trying to do. And the only sector in which US has a large presence in the global market is agriculture. And major cereals like corn, wheat, soya. These are sectors, where they have a large market globally. But these are the products in which India has said we cannot import anything. That's why we have a log jam. So if India had we had the possibility of importing at least something from the US. That's what the US Commerce Secretary actually asked our government here, that why can't India buy even a bushel of corn from the US? That's the issue that they're raising now. So the lockdown is because we are of our inability, and then we have our own compulsions. The largest segment of our peasantry is small and marginal farmers, and if the a large agribusiness is allowed to enter Indian market, they will completely lose out. So it's going to be a completely unequal bargain. and our inability to shift people away from agriculture. And that's also been a millstone around the neck. So if there is any hurt to agriculture, if agriculture suffers, then it's going to be a major economic and political problem for the government. And that's why the government is extremely cautious, and the government is unwilling to go forward. Even dairy, for that matter, dairy, the government of India has been promoting dairy because it provides an additional income to the poor farm households. So that's why we can't import anything from the US, and so the trade deficit cannot actually be reduced in the short run, and we're at this kind of a very difficult situation.
That's right. The opposition has been upping the ante against the Modi government over or Trump's, mediation during the, Operation Sindhu, the India-Pakistan conflict.
Right.
We had Prime Minister too had replied in the Lok Sabha yesterday that, the decision was taken between India and Pakistan. There was no sort of a mediation, hinting that there was no mediation as such. How do Trump's claims about brokering a ceasefire between India and Pakistan during Operation Sindhu complicate the trade negotiations? Could geopolitical tensions be derail economic discussions at this point of time?
Oh yes, certainly. Because this can certainly cool the pitch, and I would say that President Trump's claim that he mediated would have tied the hands of the Indian government even more.
Hmm.
So now, if there was a possibility of the government giving at least something, even token access to some on these cereals that I mentioned, even that would be seen as a concession to Donald Trump. So President Trump's claim, and hardly anyone believes this claim that he's making, has actually created problems for his own sort of negotiating bargain vis-a-vis India. Yeah, because the position that the Indian government has taken in the trade negotiations have got even hardened. Of course, the government will not like to see, or like anyone to interpret that. Look, President Trump is having a field day. He mediated. He claims to have mediated this very difficult situation, India-Pakistan conflict, and he's got away with it. And now, he's coming here and securing a chunk of our market.
That's right.
That means that India is completely ceding to the US, and not behaving as a sovereign power. And we are a large power, and we say we are on the way to becoming a developed country. So the government's hands have been tied more by President Trump's assertions on the India-Pakistan issue.
Okay, one last question there. India, in the negotiating team in the United States is now back in India, and India is planning to resume broader trade talks in mid-August, right? So, given the past rounds, and what would a win-win trade deal looks like for both countries by October this year, hopefully.
No, I always thought that we could start by doing a kind of an early harvest deal. That means there are a lot of low-hanging fruits to be plucked. Even in agriculture, there are minor products, nuts and all, where we have actually been importing horticulture products. Those can be looked at. We just for the moment we leave out the cereals and dairy, but then agriculture is much more than that. And then look at a few industrial sectors. For instance, automobile. As we already agreed to open it up partially in the India UK setup. That could be another sector. So there are several sectors in the manufacturing, several industries in the manufacturing sector that could be opened up to American businesses, and even agriculture, like I said, horticulture products and all. So there is a possibility of packaging a deal based, putting in all these products that I mentioned, and then we remain engaged like we have been in the past, and see where we go, and sort of work out a medium term plan, and see how what can happen in the next months, or maybe the beginning of next year, to see what kind of a deal we can negotiate.
Professor Biswajit Dhar, thank you very much. Pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Pleasure, pleasure speaking to you, Vijay. Thank you.